From the deck of a transport ship in 1946, Guam looked a little like paradise. But this southernmost island of the Marianas chain was devastated by 32 months of Japanese occupation and the fierce battle to recapture it. Its infrastructure lay in ruins. The indigenous Chamorro workforce was exhausted, starved, and demoralized, and so the government of the United States looked west across the Philippine Sea for fresh workers to rebuild the island. Filipino contract workers, most of whom were recruited from Iloilo province in the Philippines, stepped onto the first transport in 1946 for the long journey to Camp Rojas in Agate, Guam. Beautiful Guam proved to be a different kind of paradise for these workers, a place of discrimination, confinement, and sometimes misery. But the Ilonggo spirit rose to the challenge, and against all odds, helped forge a new Guam. This is where my father's story begins. I am a runner. Every morning, I get up to run the streets of Tamaning and Tumon. I ran through these streets before the streets had names. My father knew this place before the streets themselves existed. It was important for us to connect back to why my dad really came here and to understand his plight as an immigrant. All those other people that also became his friends eventually. I think it was important to document because that part of history is not documented. This story is about my father. This story is really many stories. This story is about how things go unnamed, how stories go untold.
My name is Loreto Probido. I came from Iloilo to Guam in 1950s.
They were hired by the private contractor agency, they call it Masdelco. Because there are plenty of work here after the liberation, no workers here to hire. So there is an agency that goes to the Philippines and hire the people there. He is a new graduate from college.
Almost everything on Guam was built by the Filipinos. Roads, buildings, military, everything in the military was built by Filipinos. And those are Filipinos from Camp Rojas.
Since my father's stroke, he has been slowly deteriorating. I've come to realize the fragility of his condition. The fragility of my father is the fragility of history. I asked him about his trip to Guam from Iloilo.
Ano gid ang nadumduman mo nga pag-start niya sa Camp Rojas?
I can't hardly remember because that is about more than 70 years ago.
You can't remember.
Yeah, when I came over here in Guam, the first thing that really struck people when they're coming over here is that they're lonely because they miss their family. And some of them are even crying. Some of them will go crazy.
My Auntie Pilar, a pillar of our family, arrived on Guam from Iloilo after my father. She is my and my sister's inspiration to be strong women.
I went to Camp Rojas in 1952, a year after graduation from nursing school. So I was a registered nurse in Camp Rojas. Camp Rojas houses about 5,000 to 10,000 men. Out of the 10,000, we were only 6 nurses. So every time the nurses pass by the road and here comes the long manhole pass by the road, you know, they shout, oh! They shout like that. And when they shout, I get a stone and boom! I throw them. I throw stones to them. I have to behave like a man, you know, because because if you won't behave like a man, they're going to fool you. See?
Well, I think they all came to live the American dream. It was sort of like the Ellis Island of Guam. They all came because of hope for a better future. And I think that's basically what we remember about most of the families that we were connected to. And I think it might have been hard for them, I don't know. But they never complained. To this day, they never said life was hard in the camp or life was easy in the camp.
When I look back at those Ilonggos who came to Guam, when they arrived, they were contract workers. I make comparison to them and folks that went to work in the sugar plantations in Hawaii. It's a story of perseverance. It's a story of overcoming tremendous hardships.
My trip to Guam, we rode in LST, and it takes 9 days to reach Guam. And it's a terrible trip because, you get drunk and the sea is rough or the ocean is rough. We arrived in Guam and we're all drunk.
The first group came to Guam in November 1946. And then the next group came in, of course, in 47. The original Filipinos, this type of work, they were recruited and sent to Manlas in the Admiralty Islands. There were about 400 of them. And then the work dried up. And then the military, the Navy, said we need workers on Guam. So the workers came and they started in 1947.
My father is before the war, he is a labor leader. They call it the Sons of Labor. And he is the president, Children of Laborers. And he is the president. And when World War II came, the labor organization of my father, because of the Japanese occupation, was dormant. So it was revived only after the war. My dad is the type who is really a nice man and very easy to approach. And the people in the camp out of respect, they call him the old man, Tigulang, so they respect him. And there will be some troubles like that. He's the one that affects everything, chatters everything.
Did you know that when we came, our category is hospital worker. We were not classified as an MD or an RN because if we what is this? We put that thing on us, they have to pay us equivalent to what the RN nurses in United States pays and what the doctors in United States gets. So now we are only hospital workers, so no degree.
When I was not yet hospitalized, I don't know that there are nurses in Campros. So when I was hospitalized, I said plenty of nurses. That's the time I started. After my hospitalization, I started to go to the hospital, visit them there.
So when did you start dating Auntie Pilar?
Well, it takes a long time,
Why for her to answer that?
It takes a long time, you know why?
Yeah.
Why?
Because the nurses are all wise. They're selecting the best, I guess.
So this is.
You never heard my guys complaining. There were no letters to the Navy, to the letters to the editor. They just worked, and that was it. And they were very religious too, the church. I think that helped them a lot. But the entertainment was very slim. We had movies every night. We had a lot of good sports there. We developed a sports program so we could beat the Navy. And they were just a very good group to handle. And they asked for nothing. They were tough. Those are tough people down there.
There's a recreation of, if you want to go bowling, there's a bowling place in our camp. If you want to go drink, there is a place for the drink. If you want to go to the exchange, you got the exchange right there in the camp. And if we want to go, if you want to go to church on Sunday, you got the church. You want to see the movie every day, every night. We have our movie every night and about 7 to 8 o'clock we start at 7 and then we'll up. I don't know, it depends on the length of the film. That's our life, on and on, and day in, day out, and that's it. When it's really funny is because when we go to the bathroom, we got all kind of line or long line of shower, and since because we are all men, we just go naked and take shower.
What we did, during the time, we are 4 of us. We have just buy a car, our Glide Chibi, and it cost us brand new 1,800. And they call it Chibi Power Glide. And during that time, we just pick up some guys at the camp and then bring it to the townhouse, and they charge it 25 cents per trip. See?
On Saturdays, we go fishing. If we don't play the bowling alley, the game. We go out to this Rizal Beach, go fishing, during the weekend. Or sometimes we cook for, just friends.
You can just imagine that on weekends when you have no place to stay, you just lie down there in bed, waiting for the day to come again, and then wake up and go to work. That's for the whole week, all throughout. And on weekends, you can just imagine yourself washing clothes there in the...
Our situation in our place in the Philippines, and then in the Navy, we are in the camp. It's different things. Because you have money to spend if you work. But in the Philippines, what you are going to do is to planting rice. And then when you sell the rice, it's very cheap. So it's not worth. You can even buy shoes or something like that.
We were there in Guam. You cannot visit the villages unless there will be an invitation coming from the family. That is all restricted area. So that is how it is. That is the rules of the U.S. Navy Authority. No, that they cannot go to the village. So that's how it is.
The tent was changed into a concert hut when people sometimes get sick. Because even the restroom, they just dug a hole. And you put a piece of wood and you sit down on a piece of wood on there and poo. And you know how it is outside hole like that, there's plenty of worms. And people began to get sick.
This place was no walk in the park. When I came here in New Year's Eve 1951, I was taken aback by the conditions they were living in. We had Quonset huts. The most of them no insulation. They're hot, can be very hot. And there would be 20, 30 to a Quonset with the mosquito nets hanging there, no air conditioning. Hot, really not suffocating. We got 75 cents a day to feed them. That's not a lot for 3 meals a day. And it was tough to get that raise. That's not to be critical about anybody, it's just that the government wanted to save money. And so all we had was 75 cents a day to feed them. And you don't get very far on that. And but that was, the conditions were tough.
But because just imagine we are paid only $1 an hour. The pay is based on Philippine peso. We cannot do anything because under our contract we have to pay only $1 an hour or whatever it is, and pay once a month.
Yeah, I think the other camps, it was a recruiting strategy devised by the Navy and devised by the Army and the Air Force. The Army and the Air Force tended to recruit from Ilocano communities, Clark Air Force Base itself, and Tagalog. And the Navy recruited from the Visayas. So the Visayans became associated with naval contractors and subcontractors. And the Visayans, of course, when they got here and they formed their community down there in Masdelco, eventually named it after Manuel Rojas, who was the only, Visayan to ever be president of the Philippines. So it was no accident. Was no accident. So it was not, they weren't going to name it after Magsaysay or anyone else. They were going to name it after someone who was a fellow Visayan. And so that identity was pretty well entrenched. Ironically, I think probably the Ilonggos face lesser difficulties than other Filipino workers, but all of them experienced some difficulties. I think in the beginning, a lot of people were very suspicious of them. And so as they brought their families, as they went back home, and they brought back their wives, and as they started to raise families here, a number of them faced a number of issues.
The first time they fed us, only, I don't know what kind of food is that, but I got rice, that they got plenty, a small worm, Yeah, that's right. I can,
that is small worm, big worm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was the one I was the accountant there.
Oh, okay.
At Masdelco.
Okay, okay.
So this hole is under us.
They're in the camp because they're tired of the food served to them. You know what? They have a group. They make their own food. They prepare their own food.
Oh.
They chip in. Then during weekends they go grocery, and he is the cook of the group.
Really? What did you? The cook
Mr. Gordillo was the cook?
He's the cook of the group because they're organized.
As he ages, as his generation is taken back one by one, I want to know about his journey. Yesterday, after the film crew interviewed him about his journey to Guam, he tried to climb out of his bed and make palakpak with my mother. When my mother denied him, he asked his caregiver to take him out night clubbing.
He was so alert when we arrived that night. The next morning I heard the caretaker took him around in the wheelchair and strolled him around the block in his wheelchair. That's the first time he has ever stepped out of the house for over 2 months.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe there's something revival about Camp Rojas. Maybe there isn't. There's just something special about the story.
But I told him, I said, Dad, you're too old to palakpak. You cannot.
Sometimes I go to the sea just to look at the water and think the water holds everything I want to know. The water is what carried my father here on a crowded rocky boat from Iloilo to Tumuning. The sea is what joins Iloilo and Tumuning. It's what holds Tumuning and Iloilo apart. The waves smash open on the shore, but the sea will bring you only so much of its own story. What happens when the sea can't remember itself?
What I would like to say, not about the camp, I would like to tell the group, especially you, you're one of the descendant of. I want that, and I wish that my father's memory as a labor leader and founder of Camp Rojas and their work in rehabilitating Guam, particularly Agat and Santa Rita, be perpetuated in the hearts of the Cominians. So,
Who is my father, and who am I? And what is history if it abandons us?
Ay, ay,